Alright, so the last thing we're going to take a look at in the digestive tract or alimentary canal is going to be the large intestine, sometimes referred to as the colon, but that is technically just a subsection of the large intestine. Really, we're not going to get into doing all the different parts of it and how they're distinct histologically, because there really isn't a lot of difference on it. Main thing that's going on here, there is a little bit of digestion taking place. It is bacterial in nature, not enzymes that we're releasing. More than anything, it's a lot of absorption of water and any possible nutrients that might be left, especially things from bacterial digestion, certain vitamins, for instance. Outside of that, a big function of the large intestine is the secretion of a lot of mucus. We'll see as we look at this, lots of goblet cells taking place in here. Again, because we are removing as much water as we can-ish from these feces. Sometimes we'll see, we need to see a lot of mucus in there to make sure, I was joking around, that literally that crap does not get stuck. So that's what we're trying to do on this. So if you look at the large intestine, you can see there's a few main regions to it. It kind of does an upside down U. You can see you have the ileum that is coming into the cecum, which is kind of the dead end pouch where there is the appendix, has a lot of lymphatic tissue in it. I will probably show it to you, not expect you to do too much in terms of identification of any of it though. And then you can see we have the colon that goes up and across and back down. That is the ascending, transverse, and descending colon. Kind of does a little S curve into, which is the sigmoid colon. That leads into the rectum and the anal canal. We'll see that there is some interesting, again, pretty much deadline transitions in terms of epithelium and a few other things as we get to the end of this, which again are always interesting to look at to me, histology-wise, when something goes from one type of cell to a completely different type of cell right on the spot. Again, wall of the large intestine, it has those same basic layers again. You're going to have the mucosa, again, columnar epithelium, submucosa, nothing really distinct on that one. Muscularis, pretty standard. One of the things we will not see is we're not going to see any of those plica circularis or valves of Kirkring on this one, but we do see some other structures called hostra. In terms of the structure of the mucosa, it's pretty similar. We're going to have these intestinal crypts, those crypts of Lieberkühn. Again, lamina propria going up in these. Everything else pretty distinct. Decent amount of lymph nodes in this. You can kind of see it here. The crypts are a lot of times not as deep. There's not any villi on these ones. Just the crypts. You're not going to have those finger-like extensions going up from it. Really, we're doing absorption, but not nearly as much as taking place in the small intestine. Because of that, we don't see those villi. You're not going to see microvilli much either. We do see a little bit of lymph nodes throughout this. And again, you can kind of see it as you're looking at it here. You can see the mucosa along the surface. Hard to kind of see the lamina propria, but it's going up in between those. Submucosa, pretty standard. And then the muscularis, again, pretty standard. Serosa for a large number of the parts of this. As we're getting into kind of the rectal area, we are going to leave the peritoneum again, and it becomes adventitia again without that mesothelial layer on it. As we zoom in a little bit more, you can see the mucosa and the muscularis mucosa on this one. Again, you see that there is not those finger-like extensions, not those villi going on there. Again, cells, some microvilli on these ones. As we get further down, we're going to see less and less of that. The other thing we see more and more of is goblet cells. By the end of this, they are almost making up over half the cells. Some enteroendocrine cells, and again, stem cells in all these areas. Again, no villi, no plica circularis, or those crypts of Lieberkühn. We see the crypts of Lieberkühn, none of the plica circularis, which are the valves of Kirkring, And again, as you're looking at this one, you can see that those goblet cells, they're making up a good portion of that epithelium. Lots and lots of mucus, again, because we're taking so much water out of this. Like I said, the submucosa has some lymph nodes in it. Outside of that, nothing particularly distinct, very similar to the small intestine. No special glands or anything in there. Muscularis externa has those two layers again. Slightly different bundles in the center line called the Taenia coli. Again, not anything I'm going to have you identify though, but it's pretty standard. And then again, depending on where we're at, it's adventitia or serosa. And again, you can see the muscularis layers right here. Another thing we'll see in this one, there is, I'm not going to have you take a look at it probably, but the appendix, lots of lymphatic tissue and nodes and just kind of diffuse wise. You can see a lot of these, looks like Peyer's patches. This is that dead end finger off the cecum, that appendix. Lots of lymphatic cells in there. Other than that, not much going on with it. You can see there's some crypts and other stuff in it. I'm probably not going to take a look at it. In terms of the rectum, this is the last few inches of the large intestine, about the last half a foot. Lots and lots and lots of goblet cells at this point. You have these longitudinal folds in there that can stretch out. Again, really funny names. The rectal columns of Morgagni. So I just think some of these names are so funny. We've been past the valves of Kirkring, through the crypts of Leverkusen, to the rectal columns of Morgagni. So you can kind of see that those are going to, and these are those rectal columns right here. And again, this is just that last little part of it here, surrounded by an adventitia. The anus we're going to see is it actually switches completely in terms of the epithelium, is going to become stratified squamous once it gets past the rectum. There is some internal smooth muscle that we do not have control of, as well as external skeletal muscle that we do have control over, as our two different anal sphincters. And like it says here, the last inch or so of this is the anus. This is stratified squamous epithelium again. You don't have any muscular mucosa, no lamina propria, large veins underneath this. If they somehow get burst a little bit, that's where you get hemorrhoids. And again, inner circular layer of smooth muscle, outer layer of skeletal muscle making up our anal sphincters. What's kind of interesting on this one is you can see the rectal area right here. You get to a line and it changes exactly at that line. You can see the muscle finishing up right down here, but you get to this line right here, that is that pectinate line. And once you get past that and into the anal canal, you're going to see at the higher power here, it goes from a common epithelium to a stratified squamous immediately. And you can see it right here. It's really kind of one of those distinct things where the epithelium changes, boom, in one instance right there. And that is that pectinate line. There's a good chance I'll show you that one and expect you to know the name of it. And again, you can see columnar epithelium gets right here, boom, change. Lots of goblet cells, no goblet cells. So again, really kind of interesting junction on that one. So really outside of this, we'll look at that. You need to identify the large intestine and why it's distinct from the small intestine. Pectinate line would probably be fair game. Outside of that, it's really not much else to identify in this one. This is pretty straightforward. So what we'll be moving on to after this stuff is more of those accessory organs, and then finally under the urinary and reproductive chapters. And again, you can see that internal anal sphincter here. The external, you'll see if you actually look at it, there'll be some some striations present on it. All right, so we're just going to finish up the colon here, take a look at some of the different layers here. So again, we can see our four main layers here again. You can see the mucosa, submucosa, muscularis, and the serosa underneath that. If we go in and look at this, the one thing I want you to really notice on this one is, if we zoom in on these even a little bit more, is just mainly, more than anything, the amount of goblet cells. So you can see there is columnar epithelium, but the amount of goblet cells present on these ones are quite high. Probably over half the cells are goblet cells. And again, this is, as we take more and more water out, this is what we need to be doing. The other thing I was going to show you real quick is the rectum here. So this is one where you can actually see the sphincter right here. And if we zoom in on this area, right around there, you're going to actually be able to see that pectinate line. So if we go right around in here and work our way back just a little bit, you can see right here, this is all simple squamous, stratified squamous right here, but then you can see on the other side, you have that columnar with lots of goblet cells. So again, one of the interesting things about the rectal to anal junction is you get to that little line here and it is a distinct change in epithelium.